Hey guys, how you going? Hey guys, before I start, I would like to thank Charlotte. Thank you so much. And thank you to all my PayPals and my Patreons. But my Patreon has been pulled down. I've taken it down myself because I can't keep up with putting videos everywhere, because I have to make different videos for YouTube than I do for the other platforms. Also, this is going to be different than what I posted yesterday on the other platforms like Rumble, Odysee and Bitchute. This one's going to be focused on Pine Gap by itself, and these are all mainstream media publications. So, okay, let's start with the Sydney Morning Herald one, and this was from 3 years ago, but revealed the room inside Pine Gap no Australia could enter, bar one. An old US diplomatic cable uncovered by Privacy International has confirmed the existence of a secret room at America's Pine Gap spy base that Australians were not allowed to enter, except for one time when Bill Hayden had a look, apparently. It calls into question a claim made at the time in March 1985 by then Defence Minister Kim Beazley, who said the government was fully aware of everything that takes place at Pine Gap near Alice Springs in the Northern Territory. The cable was released to PI by the US State Department. Is it PI? Yeah, PI. After a lawsuit seeking access to details of the scope of intelligence gathering across the globe. So they say it's an intelligence gathering. Okay? PI said it was a case study of how intelligence sharing arrangements, typically confidential and not subject to parliamentary scrutiny, and could be used to circumvent a country's laws. Beazley had appeared on Channel 9's Sunday program responding to reports that US bases in Australia were intercepting telephone and other electronic information in friendly countries and within Australia. We say emphatically that the facilities do not spy on Australia, Beazley said. Do you believe him? Pine Gap's role was to help verify arms control agreements and provide adequate early warning of missile launches, he said. And this is what he said in a, okay, it doesn't give me the whole, open image in the new tab. And it's not letting me, okay, it's not letting me make it any bigger. So, and half the words are cut out. Mr. Beazley, I'll read the bit in the middle. Mr. Beazley also said that the government knew everything that had happened at the bases. I've heard differently than that. What we obtained, the Americans' agreement to last year and our predecessors did not, was the ability to discuss the general purposes and functions of the bases. Yeah, general, not intricate purposes. The functions were to help verify arms control agreements and to provide adequate early warning of missile launches. You remove those two possibilities and what you'll have is a very dangerous world indeed, Mr. Beazley said, using fear to keep it. But he continued his previous stand of refusing to comment on the National Times report that Pine Gap was being used to help the US spy on Greece. Mr. Beazley said that in many areas of intelligence operations and no comment had been taken to mean effectively confirmation because there had been subsequent confirmations or occasionally denials. In the case of the bases, the government had never made subsequent comments, with the sole exception of saying they did not spy on Australia. I don't know if I believe that, but the government adopted this attitude because otherwise it would be forced into discussing in detail the operational capabilities of the facilities every time a foreign policy issue arose. Senator Nick Bolkus, a left-wing Labor MP from South Australia, repeated yesterday that he was satisfied that the US had redirected the antenna on the satellite, which communicated through Pine Gap to allow it to spy on Greece. He would not say how he had obtained this confirmation of the National Times report, but he said he was certain the federal government had not yet made a decision to approve such interception. Senator Bolkus, who is of Greek origin, said Greek leaders had told him if there had been news before last December's federal election about Pine Gap being used to spy on Greece, the Hawke government might have been defeated. Oh, now it makes sense. And Mr. Beasley is still in our, or as far as I knew he was. Okay, finishing off from, they were saying it just provides verify arm control agreements and provided early warning of missile launches, okay? But the Australian National University's defence expert, Des Ball, who died in 2016 and was one of the country's leading public researchers into what really went on at Pine Gap, said at the time that Beasley's claim was silly. The cable, written on April the 1st, 1985 from the US Embassy in Canberra to the Secretary of State in Washington, gives the details of Beasley's TV appearance and Ball's comments. It reports without comment that Beasley said the Australian government is fully aware of everything that takes place at the joint facilities and that government approval is required for any specific activity. Really? It also carries a handwritten addition by an unknown person, presumably at the US State Department, commenting on Ball's claims, which goes down. What are Ball's claims? Hang on. Oh, it's really hard to read, guys. Whoa. It's so, like, patchy. Ball was reported saying there are at least 2 areas of the facility where Australian nationals are not permitted entry. This is what I've heard too. The US National Communication and Cipher Room and the key room where they, Americans, do the final analysis of all incoming intelligence. That sounds like a big spy operation. Next to the description of the first room, the handwritten addendum says correct, but Hayden, when Shadow PM, did enter area once. Next to the description of the second room, the handwriting says no such area. And there you go. Okay. Ball had written in 1984 that Pine Gap was administered by the CIA and originally established as part of Project Rhyolite, which involved the satellite sucking up like a vacuum cleaner a wide spectrum of Soviet Chinese military communications, including telephone calls as well as radar and other signals associated with missile launches. He said later he learned about the Rhyolite program in '77, but I was uncertain about whether the Rhyolite program was Pine Gap's only function until Hayden confirmed it for me in April 1981, after he returned from a tour of the facility. It seems likely this is the visit referred to in the cable. The cable came at the height of the Ban the Bomb campaign in Australia, a day after more than 300,000 people marched across Australia in Palm Sunday anti-nuclear rallies, and the People for Nuclear Disarmament had claimed their membership had grown by 100,000 on the previous year. Then Foreign Minister Bill Hayden was on the back foot. The Sydney Morning Herald reported on April the 1st, saying the marchers' concern about the arms race was entirely justified, but Australia could not pull up the drawbridge and tell the world to go away. The objective must be no less than the elimination of nuclear weapons and of war itself. Yeah, they always say that. In 1984, Bob Hawke had partly lifted the lid on Pine Gap in a statement to Parliament saying it was not a military base and did not store or produce any weapons. Then it is a spy base, is that right? Among the functions performed are the provision of early warning by receiving from space satellite information about missile launches and the provision of information about the occurrence of nuclear explosions, he said. Yeah, okay, whatever you say. In 2013, it was revealed that Pine Gap played a key role in the US controversial drone strikes against Al-Qaeda and Taliban leaders in Afghanistan and Pakistan, tracing the precise geolocation of radio signals, including handheld radios and mobile phones across the Eastern Hemisphere, from the Middle East, across Asia to China, North Korea and Russia. A defence white paper released in 2016 said Pine Gap delivered information on intelligence priorities such as terrorism, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and military and weapons developments. while contributing to the verification of arms control and disarmament agreements. Yeah, that's what they all say. In the report titled Secret Global Surveillance Networks, yeah, it's more like it, PI said the new scope and scale of intelligence gathering has given rise to a new scope and scale of the sharing of that intelligence between governments, particularly in response to threats to national security. And what are they saying now? Everything's a threat to national security, so, Despite these dramatic changes in many countries around the world, the public remains in the dark regarding state surveillance powers and capabilities. This is what I mean. We live in the Truman Show. I hope everybody realises that. We are all, your mobile phone, if you've got computers with cameras and microphones, yeah, just don't be surprised. Though intelligence sharing was important and effective in preventing acts of terrorism and other threats to national security, it does interfere with fundamental human rights, including the right to privacy, the report said. Non-transparent, unfettered and unaccountable intelligence sharing poses substantive risks to human rights and the democratic rule of law. Okay, and let's go to this one, because Pine Gap keeps growing. And this was from September the 18th, 2020. Okay, this is another mainstream publication, the alicepringnews.com.au. Okay, Pine Gap, I keep going, Pine Gap keeps growing, but I'm getting tongue-tied. When the lips of governments and contractors stay tightly sealed, one way to find out what's going on at the Pine Gap military base is via Google Earth. You have to know what you're looking for, of course. Last year, a senior manager for contractor AECOM at a defence industry seminar in Alice Springs confirmed that the base was getting a midlife upgrade. After 52 years, they were bringing the old girl up to modern standards. Oh, dear God. He said that involved for an unquantified spend, civil construction, roads, subsystems and vertical construction, meaning buildings and other infrastructure. So technological installations, the Alice Spring News asked. We don't talk about that side of it, but Google Earth does. Antennas, not so much the big white randomes, are the things to look for. And Richard Tanter, pictured, senior researcher with the Nautilus Institute and honorary professor at the University of Melbourne, together with colleagues, has been counting them for years. That familiarity allowed him to notice from early April that 3 big new antennas and a sprinkling of smaller new antennas were under construction at the base, a major expansion. He thinks they will probably be equipped with radars, although these are not visible yet. The new antennas take the visible total from 33 in 2015 to 39 today. The existing 6-hectare OPIR, overhead persistent infrared compound, has more than tripled in size, expanding by an additional 14 hectares. Speaking yesterday to Philip Adam on RN's Late Night Live, he said the expansion involves all of the major functions of Pine Gap, both signals intelligence collection, spying on the secrets of other countries, and watching via the infrared telescopes the wars of Afghanistan and the Middle East, and preparing for any kind of war. Dear me. Mr. Adams was interviewing Professor Tanner and this reporter as the author of the recently published book Peace Crimes, Pine Gap, National Security and Dissent. The overhead imagery from the infrared telescope gets mashed with geolocation intel, Professor Tanter explained. For example, one part of Pine Gap helps locate a certain cell phone being used and decrypts that conversation. This intel is flashed across to Washington, where it's decided that it's important. That's flashed back to Pine Gap to get the infrared imagery. All this is used in a very concrete way by American combatant commands, Professor Tanner told Mr. Adams. It's a long way from the old days of sending national-level policy intel to the CIA. Pine Gap keeps growing. In due course, Professor Tanner and colleague Bill Robinson will report their analysis of this latest expansion on the Nautilus Institute site, adding to the substantial archive of information about Pine Gap already hosted there. Image. The interest of area is at the western extremity of the base an extension of the relay ground station, which receives signals from US early warning satellites, critical to US nuclear war fighting, planning and operations. The expansion indicates a greater Australian involvement with those plans and operation, Professor Tanner told the Alice Springs News. This Google Earth image from July 2020 shows in north-south line to the west of the current 4 big antennas housed in randomes that the concrete foundations of all 3 antennas have been laid and the cylindrical base for the northernmost antenna is under construction. Okay, and I've come across another article. It says the same thing pretty much, but in regards to satellite research, Pine Gap allows access to satellites that cold spy on every continent, including the Americas and Antarctica, which I found really interesting. 9 Signet Signals Intelligence have been operated by Pine Gap for over the last 45 years. Considered a prime piece of real estate by the US, the satellites controlled by Pine Gap make it possible the collection of a wide range of signals more than half the surface of the planet. If you know anything about countries spying on each other, that, yeah, just really, that's very, very interesting. But I don't think we've even got to the half of it, to be honest. And that's all I can say on here. If you want to know more, go over to the links will be in the description in the under this video. So please go over to like Rumble or Bitchute or Odysee and watch over there. So yeah. Okay, guys. I'm thinking of going live shortly again. Possibly, if all goes well, in just under 24 hours, hopefully. But, well, yeah, I'll see how I go. I'm just about to go and make another video for Rumble and Bitchute and Odysee. So please join me over there. I hope you have a good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm off to do some queening and vacuuming, you know. Have a good one, guys. Okay, bye.